Hey, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Town of Naples Planning Board meeting workshop for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. To order, the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
It's a workshop, kind of weird.
That we're far away.
Well, we had a feeling somebody else was coming, so.
Oh, no.
And you know, she likes to sit next to you.
In attendance tonight, we have Jen Lehman, Martina Witz, thank you, Martina. Myself, Doug Bogdan, Marty Zatarian, Robert Fogg, Kathy Tombrelli from the Planning Office, and Kathy Iddy from the Planning Office. Number 3 is approved minutes from January 21st meeting. I know there were a couple of edits. Was there a couple of edits to that went back?
Yeah. They've been
Corrected.
Okay.
I make a motion, we accept them as edited.
Second.
A motion and acceptance, and a second to accept the minutes from January 21st. All in favor? Aye. Okay, there was 3-0, right?
Yeah, I wasn't here.
Pass 3-0. And what about the minutes for February 4th, 2025? I was not here for that meeting.
Did you get my email?
Got your email, made the correction? Got your email, made the corrections?
I did see those corrections.
Then I'll make a motion, we accept those as edited, as corrected.
Robert makes a motion to accept February 4th, 2025 minutes. Second?
Second.
Okay, second by Marty. All in favor? 3-0. Thank you. And moving on to item number 4 is the planning board workshop for Maine Municipal Association. We'll just start with A.
Sure.
Okay. Sounds like a good place to start.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, please.
I included in your packet excerpts from 2022, the revised in 2022, but it was from the 2023 Maine Municipal Workshop. And I just did that to kind of help all of us, kind of remind us what we're authorized to do, the procedures, the order. And there was some things in here that I thought were interesting because, you know, when you work for different towns, you get into every town's bad habits. You know, and it happens. Mm-hmm. And one thing we used to do in Gray was we would go through the criteria and we would just go 1 through 12, you know, as in planner's memo. It's a no-no. According to this, you shouldn't do that, and it was confirmed by the attorney the other day that we do need to go through each criteria one by one and make a vote on each one, not lump sum them. If you look on page 7, it says each standard criteria and application must be approved by a majority of board members, and we can't refer back to planner's memos, dated whatever, that those aren't necessarily illegal. Although you can have a full request for planner's memos, they're not necessarily a legal document, so we need to make sure that we don't reference my memo, for example, to do that. But I also wanted to throw out there, if there's anybody that's interested in going in trainings, you know, they sent out a schedule and we do have money in the budget for training for any of you to attend. So I will send those out when there's something that's at least, you know, kind of in close proximity to us. And there are sometimes web ones as well. I find I don't get as much out of web as in person, but that's just me.
So can you explain again, so what we specifically do differently? So when I first got on the planning board, we had just hired North Star Planning.
Yeah.
So we always used their memo.
Yeah.
I think before that, I don't even know how the findings of fact were written. What I find that we do differently and not in line with what MMA says is that we, Jesus, I just lost my train of thought. So right now we go through and we reference back where you have indicated how they meet the criteria.
Yeah.
So are we supposed to not even say that it's referenced in the memo? Or can we just not agree, could we not agree with it?
I think that the way that North Star did the memos was really good. I liked it. It was very helpful for me.
Yeah.
And I think that they went through and kind of made notes as to how they met it. But then when you go down to the next section where it's the criteria, I think we, in the past, maybe referenced those memos, and they weren't necessarily in the chronological order. I think it's really good just to follow the ordinance in the order that it's in. Do you know what I mean? And I can write my memo so that it does that, so that we're checking each of the boxes. The other thing that doesn't work sometimes is you need to have, in order for an application to be deemed complete, you have to make sure, and we did it the last meetings, make sure that the waivers are granted first, because you have to have waivers from submittals in order for the application to be complete, because the application is complete with the waivers. Otherwise, it wouldn't be complete, right? And I think sometimes in the interest of time, we do things in reverse order sometimes, or we end up granting a waiver after we've already deemed the application complete. Do you know what I mean? So we just need to make sure that we do waivers granted, completeness, and then we go into the reviewing of each element in site plan. And I think that's just habit, and following our ordinance, the order of our ordinance. And it's me too. It's me too.
When you say the order of the ordinance, what are you actually referring to? Because every application is looking at different aspects of
Right.
the ordinance.
Right, so and the other thing that I need to do is to make sure our checklist lines up with our ordinance chronologically too, so that we are kind of making sure that we haven't missed something or done something out of order. But I think you guys are doing a great job. I'm just trying to figure out, there's some changes for me too. The fact that you guys vote for completeness, and then the whole time clock, that's new to me too. The 60 days within completeness that you have to either approve or deny their application. That makes it a little bit harder because, we only meet a couple times a month, right? And at some point, once we do completeness, we gotta make sure we're on that time clock. I never ran into that anywhere else, and it's not because you guys are going slower, it's because you guys don't schedule the public hearing until when you're at a meeting, so that adds another 2 weeks, right? So it's just the timeline, and those are things that we could discuss maybe later as part of maybe changing the site plan review process. Maybe we decide to schedule a public hearing sooner. For example, if an application comes in and I know it's pretty darn complete, it would be nice if the planner had the discretion to schedule a public hearing, and in the worst case scenario is we table it, right? And then that way the ads go out, the butters notices go out, they're all queued up for a public hearing, and if you guys deem the application not complete, we just don't hold the public hearing. Those are the kind of nuances we just kind of need to figure out, because we're running into some time constraints for us. One of the biggest obstacles for us is that the newspaper that we use has a really short date, and we have to get it out almost 2 weeks in advance. We have to get it out to them 2 weeks in advance, which causes a real hiccup for us too, meeting the statutory requirements for a meeting. So we meet twice a month. We have an applicant that comes to the first meeting, there's no way for them to get on the next meeting, because if it becomes a public hearing, because we can't meet the advertising deadline. So those are just some timing nuances that we need to kind of work through, and it may not have been a problem, but in the last couple things we've had somewhere, it has been a problem for us to try, especially with zoning board of appeals, but for planning board as well.
What would be helpful, so in the past, we didn't assume that every single application would have an official public hearing. Should we just assume that we're always going to do a public hearing? And that way you can be posting it regardless of whether or not we've determined yet, and then...
Majors, particularly for major site plan and major subdivision.
Right.
Yeah, that it's going to be a public hearing. Now, sketch plan is sketch plan. I don't think that we need to do that. But if you're coming back, for a second round for site plan, for example, we have an application right now that would be the case, where it's going to be ready for public hearing. But if we wait that's gonna be one more meeting before we,
Right,
Can
that
do
one that's
it.
coming back, I mean,
Yeah.
let's just call that a public hearing.
yeah.
So the driver of this is the 60-day window, from once we determine that it's complete.
Completeness, that's part of it. The other part of it is that, it's just pushing applications out one more meeting. If we don't, if you don't do the public hearing, so if we have to wait till we get here for completeness, then it's going to delay them at least another 2 weeks, if not a month, usually a month, because of our advertising deadline. So it's just something to think about. I'm not asking for an answer right now, and I think that there is some specific ordinance language that could maybe be changed. And I think a lot of this goes back to the fact that there was no planner here, that was code enforcement. So the code enforcement officer wasn't gonna determine completeness, right? And I'm still not the one that determines completeness, but if I see an application and they've checked all the boxes and all the materials are there, I can make an assumption that it's a complete application. Schedule a public hearing, you guys will still make the determination in the meeting, but then we're ready to have a public hearing that night if the application is ready. And I'm just thinking about for businesses, you know what I mean? It's a lot of time and effort. Sometimes people are coming from out of state for applications, and to try to have them come back again.
Well, now that I
Yeah.
think North Star Planning used to catch a lot of that too. I mean,
Yeah.
it is my feeling that with, whether it was North Star Planning or whether it's you, now that we have our own planner, is that an application shouldn't even come to us
Unless it's
complete,
Yeah.
because we really can't be doing anything.
Yeah.
We can't even grant a waiver. We cannot
Yeah.
go into the process of discussing it or
Deliberations.
deliberation or
Right.
anything.
Other than sketch plan, obviously
Right,
sketch
yes.
plan is just the,
Yeah.
just getting them in the door. So I guess I'm asking you if that was the case, that North Star kind of made that completeness determination or didn't put it on the agenda?
They would mention it, they would say that, well, I mean, they always leave it up, the planning board could determine the application is to complete, but if there was something glaringly missing, they would bring it up, and then,
Yeah.
I say glaringly, but then if it was something small, I think we would decide, even though we didn't declare it complete, we would say it's complete enough to start the process. and then-
Yeah,
Because that is a nuanced difference, as
Yeah.
long as you're not voting on it and saying
Yeah.
it's complete, the clock doesn't begin to tick.
that's
But
right.
you can say, you have just about everything except, and
Yeah.
we don't want to really send you away, let's start
Without
the.
giving you something to go
Right.
with, so that you know what you're gonna yeah, I think the straw poll for what you would likely to require,
Right.
you know,
I
that
mean,
you're.
they certainly have to show
yeah.
standing. I'm not going
Yeah.
to go into a process if someone
Right,
hasn't
doesn't
provided
have
proof
right
of
title,
standing,
yeah, right title or interest, yeah.
That's just my thought.
So, so I put this in here, and I also included the zoning board of appeals, even though you're not the zoning board of appeals, because I think, like in the last example that we had, that it kind of helps you, and it helps me think about what needs to be in a notice of decision, and what, exactly what needs to be in there, so that if it does go to the board of appeals, that we have the right language, or maybe that perhaps it wouldn't. And one of the things that I would have done differently is I would have stated exactly for waivers granted, why they were granted, and the ordinance reference, and that's on me. I need to work on that, but we need to do it in the meeting too. So if we grant a waiver, per the ordinance, state the ordinance, and then also the criteria. So we need to list, I think it's A through E. I think that we find that it meets criteria A, B, C, D, E, because if we don't find it meets that exact criteria, then technically we're not supposed to grant the waiver, first of all. And second of all, if it does go to appeal, they're gonna say, well, the grounds for granting the waiver were not based on your ordinance. And so that's on both me and you. We need to make sure that we're finding that.
So can I use
Yeah.
a particular example? Is
Sure.
it okay to mention the Sand Brown one? Or no?
That's the one that I'm thinking
Well, 'cause
of,
we I
yes.
thought we did a good job in explaining why we allowed didn't want the driveway
I-
cut to be from Sand Road.
Yeah,
We did
I
a
thought
very
we
good
did
job.
too. I thought we did too, but it
Right.
didn't line up I would have done it differently. I would have had you vote that it meets the criteria A through whatever it is for granting waivers. And then we can also put, specific things,
Okay.
other reasons, but it needs to line up with exactly with the reasons in here. And reference any other ordinances related to. and that's on me. Interesting thing about that one is I was more worried about the other decision that was denied, and so I spent a lot more time on that one because I thought it was going to get appealed than the one that was granted, right? And because usually you don't have an appeal when someone comes in and gets what they want, right? They get their project. So I had put the emphasis on the wrong notice of decision. Something new, you learn, you live and learn, right? So anyway, I think we just need to button that up just a little bit, and that's on my end, but also just to keep me, reminding me too, because I will try to cover those things in the memo. Waivers, here's the waiver criteria, these are the waivers requested, so we make sure that we reference that a little better.
So there's one thing that I noticed that we do differently than what, I mean, I watch the Bridgeton Planning Board
Yeah.
a lot because they get similar projects to what we do, and I just
Yeah.
feel like I can learn a lot. And I notice when they do theirs, because I think their chair, they don't have a municipal planner. Deb, their chair, writes up the findings of fact and conclusions of law. They do it together in the meeting where they're approving the project, and then they come back again at the next meeting and actually vote on those. So I'm not saying that, I'm just wondering where this, because so we go through the findings of fact, conclusions of law, the day, the night that we're approving a project or not approving it, but then we never actually see them again, those final findings of fact, conclusions of law, because we added things to them, we never really see them. Should we be seeing them again? Should we be voting on them again?
That's a good question.
Where do they, I think I had brought this up once before, that when we sign plans, I would like to see a copy of the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and all the conditions of approval attached to the plan, so to make sure that the plan actually reflects what we voted on. I just, is there like a little, does anyone else feel like there's something wiggly there? I don't-
Okay, what I think I'll do is I'll look into our ordinance a little bit more. When I was in Gray, I signed the notices of decisions. They voted on them there, and I would sign them. It didn't go back to the chair to sign them. In New Gloucester, they waited till the next meeting, and you would bring the notice of decision with the findings of facts to the next meeting, and the chair would sign it at the next meeting. It was an actual agenda item where it would say findings of facts and conclusions of law for whatever project. If you meet every 2 weeks, that's not big of a deal, maybe because in Gray they only met once a month. That would mean that they would have to wait a month to get that document, which may hinder their financing or moving forward. So it may have been something that had been delegated to the planner through ordinance language to sign the final one. So I think that it could come back, definitely. And a lot of times the final plans aren't ready yet to be signed, like because you've found something that needs to be added, like the signs on the fence or whatever. So maybe they bring the plan back, we have the notice of decision with it, and that gets as an agenda item signed at the next meeting. I mean, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything in the ordinance that says specifically how you do it, but that could work.
I mean, I don't want to have to bring the applicant
Yeah,
back.
no, not the applicant, but
No, okay,
they bring in
Right.
if they bring in their plans, let's say there was one thing that you asked them to change.
Right.
You could just have it as an agenda item, signing a final plan and findings of fact for XYZ project. And then that way you get a chance to see it one more time, hopefully at least a week ahead of time, so if there's any changes, or
Right.
kind of like you could do the minutes, right?
Right.
Or something is spelled wrong or looks incorrect or not how you remembered it. Maybe that's a way to do it, and bring it back as an agenda.
I think, I don't want to be the only one making the decision, I just
Yeah.
feel like we do it, it seems like, not that we do it in
Yeah.
haste, but it just seems like a lot's going on, and then we never see the final
The final
document,
yeah.
we never see it.
And is that included with, or filed with the, what used to be called the Mylar with the final plan that we signed, do you know?
No, not necessarily, no, usually not, in fact.
That's
no.
what we're looking for, right? So that, or it's on the plan. I know we talked about it before, being on the plan, so that we know that everything.
Well, I don't think, I think we were talking about the conditions of approval being on the plan. I mean, you're not going to put the whole findings of fact, conclusions of law on the plan.
Usually waivers are, at least
Waivers
waivers are on
Yeah.
the final subdivision. Remember, only subdivision plans get signed or recorded. That's the only thing. Some people record their site plans because they want to, but only subdivision plans are required by state statute to be recorded. and that's usually the only ones that get recorded. So those are supposed to have the waivers on it, and then specific conditions if the planning board wants them. I know in Gray, they always wanted all roads are to remain private. That was one they wanted on that final plan, so there'd never be any question that that road was gonna be adopted. But not necessarily all of them were on the final plan, but in most cases they are in subdivision. Site plan, it's nice to have them on it, but they're not getting recorded anywhere. It's just what we have on record. But no, the notices of decisions are not typically recorded. There are some cases where they are. But, these are the things that, I'm just not 100% sure on how. I know that one of them, you guys voted to allow Doug to sign it, so he came in my office and signed it. But if you would rather have it come back at the next meeting, like I said, since we meet every 2 weeks, it's not that big of a deal to have it come back for one more set of eyes. Or five more sets of eyes, or 7, depending on how many are here.
I don't know, is that a question?
That's a question, if that's the way you want to do it, I'm more than,
Well, I'm fine with it coming back to the board
yeah,
if it's just a simple, make sure the T is crossed.
yeah.
We can do it if the board's okay with just me coming in to sign it like we did for that one project, that's fine with me. But if it's more than that, I think that it should come back before the board.
How about if, some of them are kind of complicated, there's a lot of conditions, maybe it's good, if it's something simple, we find in the meeting that there's only 1 or 2 conditions, or maybe there's none, then clearly Doug could sign it, come into my office and sign it, it's not a big deal, but if it's something like some of the ones we've worked on recently, maybe it comes back to the next meeting instead of.
You're not talking about the plan, you're talking about the, what's the technical name for the thing now?
Notice of decision.
The notice of decision, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When have you, because you don't, Doug, you haven't been signing notice of decisions in the meetings, have you? Ever?
No, he comes in later.
Yeah, okay. So we've never been looking at the final of that.
North Star used to do them and just sign off on them.
They did, yeah. I don't want to make it more complicated, I just want to make sure we're not missing anything, that's all.
Because I think that was something in the ordinance, as somebody said.
Yeah, let me do a little bit more digging on that one, and I'll give you an update at the next meeting, as far as if there's anything in the ordinance that would make us do it one way versus the other. Yeah, let me take a little, but I hear what you're saying, that it is kind of weird that it just goes off into the etherland, and then Doug comes in and signs it, and you never really get to see the final product.
Maybe you could just, would it be acceptable that we even just see it in an email, just so we see it, and then he could still go in, and that way, just like with the minutes, and then we read it, and if we see something wrong?
Yeah, that could work.
That doesn't violate anything?
No,
because
as long as you're not discussing it.
We're not discussing it,
Yeah.
it's already everything that we've discussed in public, it's just basically a final proofread by everybody.
That could work too, where, I draft it and send it out as a draft.
Yeah.
Send me anything that you see that I've missed, type of thing. That could work as well. That way it doesn't have to come back to the next meeting.
Is
And the
that?
final recording is still public record, so.
Right.
Right. All right, let's try that and see how that
Yeah,
works.
that sounds good.
But the rest of the Maine municipal conversation was just to provide you with this information and throw out there that the next time there's a training opportunity, I will send it to you if it's local, and maybe we can all go as a group or a small group or whatever and just get updated, because I know I did go every year for several years. The one thing that I will say about them is sometimes they scared you a little bit, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? They get into the worst case scenario type of stuff, and we don't usually deal in the worst case scenarios, but it's still good to hear, I guess. And then, of course, you have to sit through the zoning board part, but I think to see the other side of the coin, the zoning board of appeals, what happens if your decision appealed is probably a good thing to see maybe once every 4 or 5 years too. Not necessarily something that you have to do every year, but it might have been a while since you've gone. And they can be fun. They can be kind of fun.
During COVID, so mine was online.
Online. Yeah, the online one, it doesn't work for me, and you can't answer asking questions is a little bit more difficult to me, but anyway. So that's all I have for
Jen and
that.
I went in person.
Okay, that was all for
Yeah,
4A, and it would be the planning board, give me the planning board procedures.
yeah, I found this document, and I had not really looked at it that much, so I just included it. So you guys could just have a look at it.
My problem with this document has always been that it refers to everything as though it's a public hearing. I don't know if that's intentional. I mean, so this isn't really, I mean, words matter when we're talking about legal things, right?
It's that
Right.
first
So
sentence
every
right
meeting
there.
is not a public hearing.
Yep.
And it talks about it, I thought, when I first read it and knew nothing about being on the planning board, I read this first and I assumed that all planning boards were public, meetings were public hearings, and
Yep.
that's not correct. So, I guess that's my problem, fundamental problem with this. It just talks about our meetings as though they're all public hearings. And they're not. I mean, that's a deliberate choice to make something a public hearing. Certain things need to happen, you need to declare it, but you need to put, we just talked about that, so.
And I think that's where sometimes I was confused, where like every meeting is open to the public.
Public,
Right.
So we considered it over the years, I think, as a public hearing, that the public was invited to all of them, because they're always posted,
Yeah,
but they're not posted as a public hearing, they're posted as a planning board
it's
meeting.
it's a weird differentiator.
And the public is invited, but you're
Yeah.
right, wording can mean a lot.
Yeah,
So if we're going to move to have all of our first meetings public hearings,
no, I don't think that's
I
what
would
we're
say all of them.
No, I don't think that's what we're doing,
Right.
because in some cases, you guys don't require to have a public hearing. I think when it's major subdivision and major site plan, that might be a case where if an application comes in and it's complete, that maybe perhaps we could be preemptive, particularly if there's a people will tell you if there's some kind of time factor to it. If this is something, like we've had a couple applications that haven't been in any hurry at all right now, because they're not planning on doing anything for 2 to 3 months, right? So in those cases, I don't see any reason to be preemptive and do a public hearing, but if you know someone's got a time-sensitive application, they've come in with something almost, looks complete, they've checked all their boxes, then I think that it might be good to preemptively advertise. Like I said, the worst thing has happened is you don't hold it or you table it until a subsequent meeting.
Like, example would be March 18th's meeting. We have an applicant, but we also have an ordinance review. We could have that as a public hearing because we have a feeling that that person would be a complete application.
And we need to have a public hearing
And we need
anyway,
to have a public hearing for that one.
because of the
but
ordinances.
you'll have to post them as two different public hearings, right?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
but at least we would be able to preempt saying, hey, we kind of know that this one's going to probably move forward. Let's have a public hearing as well.
So, I mean, so what do we do with this then? Because it says planning board procedures and it's,
Maybe this was written specifically for public hearings, though. Yeah, you know what I mean?
The first sentence is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first sentence, yeah,
It
says
says that, but
to
yet,
conduct a public hearing held by the planning board.
but is everything in here? So witnesses shall be required to state for the record, so those are the people that want to speak, but then there's a part, where's it? Order of business, No, because it says board determines whether it has jurisdiction over the application. I mean, we don't get all the way to a public, I'm looking down in section F4, we don't get all the way to a public hearing, and we finally, for the first time, determine we have jurisdiction over an application, or that the board decides whether the applicant has a right to appear before the board. That doesn't happen in a public
Happens
hearing.
earlier, yeah.
And the applicant or his representative witnesses have an opportunity to present his or her case without interruption. Well, they've already been before us by this point so many times, right? I guess this makes it seem like this is the first time we're hearing it,
Yeah.
so, right?
Yeah.
And that, basically, that whole section F is just talking about how how at a regular meeting, we take in evidence and how we ask questions. But then at item 14, it goes back to saying the hearing is closed after all parties have been heard. I feel like the hearing's almost more for the public than it is for the applicant, because again, the applicant would have already come before us.
I mean, it does say that item G right underneath
Yeah.
says the board may waive any of the above rules if good cause is shown, which that could just be, like, this document just seems very formal for the procedures that we follow now, because we're already doing it ahead of time, where this is kind of bundling it all into that one meeting.
Yeah.
Because we still have to prove all of those things anyway.
Right.
It's just that we prove them all before the public hearing, not during it.
I feel like this was written specifically for public hearings. The way that it's written doesn't really talk about just like a regular meeting like tonight where it's not a public hearing.
Well, then maybe the only thing we need to change is planning board procedures for public hearings. Just change the title.
No, I'm not proposing
yeah.
that we change anything, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I just thought that there was some good stuff in here about the order of business and the actual public hearing, opening, leaving the public hearing open. I just thought it's your guys' rules, so, for a public hearing, so I thought it'd be good to talk about it, especially since I'm new and we've been talking a little bit about public hearings and what it constitutes a public hearing and when can people talk, basically.
I mean, we've always been very open to allowing the public to speak even if it's not a formal public hearing.
Yeah.
I'd hate to see that go away.
So even if we had a public hearing as our initial meeting was also a public hearing, and then saying after that meeting was over, the public doesn't get to speak any longer on it?
I feel like it needs to be reined in a little bit. We've had a couple where people have, first of all, been speaking when they're sitting in their seat, not coming to the mic, saying who they are, where they live, and then stating saying their piece. I think that typically, when you have an application, and the abutters have been notified, it says in there, it should say, we need to look at that to see if on the bottom, if you have anything to say, please send it in by no later than 3 p.m. or the 2 days before, whatever you want to set as a deadline, and then you could have their comment about a specific application in writing or by email. But I think we do need to narrow down the public, because once you've deliberated on something and talked about what you want to do, and then someone gets up and says, well, we really like you to do something different, it just gets a little bit problematic, because you've already made a decision, or you've already voted on it being complete, or you've already voted on whatever, and then you got someone that comes up and they may not like the application for whatever reason, but if you've already found that it meets the criteria, it just kind of opens up a can of worms, if you know what I mean. But I think that the public should have an opportunity, when they get their notice that says that this is going to be happening in their town, next door to them, they should be able to write in or send an email, and that could be included in your packet, or read into the record, this is the correspondence that I've received as part of the public hearing. But then at some point, the public hearing gets closed, and that's the end of comment.
Yes, at the last meeting, I had to open and close the public hearing a couple
Yeah.
times. I guess, yeah, that's the other thing with the public hearing, that's,
Yeah.
right, so you call the meeting to order, but
Yeah.
then within the meeting, you have the public hearing, so you call that to order, and then you close the
it.
public hearing, because now you're done
Done,
receiving
listen,
evidence, and
yes.
you're supposed to deliberate.
Deliberate, and that's really the end
Yeah,
of it.
That
Yeah.
is.
You're
But then
not
I
supposed
opened
to
it
ba-
again because somebody else, you weren't here, I'm just saying this, because somebody else on Zoom had something that they wanted to say,
Yeah.
or we read it into the record, and then there was another person in the audience that had one more thing to say, so we.
Yeah, I think we need to cut it at some point. Now, I think the Zoom situation might be a little bit different if, first of all, someone wasn't seen, you know what I mean? Because we're all
Right, no,
talking,
right, I
you
have no-
know,
I
and
have
you,
no
but you can go back and see when that was 20 minutes ago or
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
But at some point, the public hearing needs to be closed. If you watch planning board member meetings at other towns, or even select board meetings where they have their 3 minutes where they can talk, after that, there's no more talking after that. So I think we need to, because it just gets into a back and forth session, and a lot of times it's just the same stuff being reiterated.
And it's really not fair to the applicant either.
No.
Too, if we've gone through the public hearing, because I've noticed that happens, that's happened a couple times where we'll go through the public hearing and then at the next meeting, someone from the public wants to speak, and then it's like, oh, right, that is a good point. We should change what we wanted to this, and it's really not fair to the applicant.
It's kind of late in the
Yeah.
game.
So oftentimes, I don't know. So let's say, I'm trying to think of an instance. So let's assume the public hearing happens on one day, and we don't make the decision that day, right? But we've closed the public hearing, right? We're done with the public hearing. But we still don't we don't have enough, we don't feel like we have enough information to deliberate, or maybe we're waiting for something else from the applicant, so we go to another meeting. This can happen, right? And then at that other meeting, we would have to be vigilant about not accepting any more comments about that project unless that was also, again, a public hearing.
I would say that's fair, except for like if the applicant was making a significant change. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my
Because then
thought
you'd want to have
process.
people be able to
Right.
comment on the significant
Versus if it's
change.
something where we go through the public hearing and, you know, they're missing documentation or something.
Right.
And we're like, no, we want to see this all in hand before we make a decision.
Right.
And then they come back with just those things that we prescribe that we want, then I think that's more than fair to say we don't need, or we shouldn't have public comment again, because we've already done the public hearing. There's nothing new to discuss besides those
So do we
missing
call that
items.
public comment just and allow it, or do we have to call another public hearing?
I think, well, first of all, I don't think, I could see situations where that would happen, but I think that you should have almost everything you need once you get to the public hearing. If it's just maybe one additional item, then I don't think you would want to reopen a public hearing at the next meeting.
Right.
Because then you're gonna go backwards and talk about things that you've already deliberated and decided on.
Yeah,
And I
that's
get
why-
wanting to have the public participate, but at some point, you know, you gotta, in fairness to the applicant, and if they've ticked all the boxes too, that's the biggest thing, that's what the checklist is for.
Right.
They've ticked the boxes. You're not gonna go back if they've got X amount of parking spaces, that's what's required, they meet the ordinance. We don't need to go back and talk about parking again. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't seem fair to the applicant to do that, particularly if every time you change it, they gotta go back and redraw their plans.
And that's exactly what I was saying. As long as there wasn't any major change, like if we were waiting for like one finalized like appearance thing, and then they came back with something completely different, then that's where I would say, okay, I think we need to reschedule something because you've made a major change. But in the sense of doing what's prescribed at the meeting, I think that would be more than fair to just continue with closing out that application.
Maybe it's something that could actually be determined at that meeting, whether or not you're tabling the public hearing to the next meeting.
Oh, and then it could be reopened.
Or
Yeah.
closing the public
Okay.
hearing, because the good thing about that is if you table it, then we don't have to re-notify, first of all, because it's being done in a public meeting. So if you table it till the next meeting, then people will know that they have an opportunity to speak. If you close the public hearing because you've got most everything what you need, and it's just gonna be a minor change, or they're adding something to the plan, or whatever,
Okay.
then it's done, you know, and not go back and reopen that.
That's perfect, I think,
Yeah.
table.
Table it to public hearing to the
That's
next
perfect.
meeting.
And could I just ask or suggest perhaps that if we're going to accept written testimony of something, that the person actually has to sign their name,
Can't be anonymous.
and they can't just say, I live in Naples or something?
So if we can table a public hearing or not, I guess, if we're asking the applicant to bring back something at the next meeting,
Yeah.
and we close the public hearing, and they bring back something that is changed, but maybe not a huge change, we don't have to ask the public again for another hearing if we close it? We don't have
We
to.
don't close it.
So,
Don't close it. If we're requesting more
Yeah, so
information, then it should be open, just
Okay.
remain open.
But what if we don't, what if we have the public hearing and everybody speaks, and then as we're talking with the applicant, something comes up, and we say, oh, we'd like a little more information on that, but we've already closed that public hearing earlier in the meeting.
You could determine, in that case, you could determine that you're going to hold another public hearing and do it
Yeah.
right at that meeting. I think we just need to be very clear on whether we're closing it, we're tabling it, or if we're gonna open up a new one potentially open it so that we can take care of it in that meeting. Because
Okay.
we don't have the time
Yep.
to go re-notify that and do that. But it needs to be clear. And if we don't have a public hearing at the next one, then no public comment, you know.
Yeah. Okay,
Just to make it a little bit more distinct and clear. Because I think one of the meetings just was a little bit too much out of just, you know, speaking in the back or popping up to the mic, not saying who they were and why they're talking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need to tighten that up a little bit.
okay. All right, I just didn't want to
Yeah.
close us off if we ask the applicant for something
Right.
else after that.
And it turns
Public
out to be
hearings.
more
Yeah, it
than
was a
what
little
we
more
thought.
detailed than something
Yeah.
little. And I
Right.
wanted to be able to have that opportunity
Yeah.
to open that public hearing back up,
Yeah.
so they could be introducing something new that
Yeah.
they didn't think about, we didn't think about, or
Yeah.
you didn't think about, so.
And we want to try to make it so they don't have to
Okay.
wait 4 weeks to come back.
Yes, that's the issue.
Okay, that's fine.
That's the issue.
So the next, we just need to move on to the next item?
Yeah.
So on the attendance thing, you guys don't have any particular rules for attendance that I could find. But one thing that I would ask is if you're not gonna be able to make it, and it happens to everybody, right? Things happen. But to let us know, not the day of, you know, I mean, obviously if someone gets sick or ill or there's an emergency, but we were close to not having a quorum at the last meeting, and the people traveled from quite a significant distance. So if we could just have a heads up, you know, at least 2 or 3 days in advance so that we can postpone a meeting. Because once again, if it's a public hearing and we postpone it to another date, 2 weeks ahead of time, 2 weeks, that can also take care of the notification process and all of that. It's just postponed. The public hearing is postponed to the next date. So we just need a little bit of a heads up so that we can try to make sure, A, we have a quorum, B, we have sufficient time to notify an applicant that a meeting's going to be canceled or postponed in the case of a public hearing. But I could not find anything specific as far as attendance, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see anything. And I don't think we have.
Requirement is regarding stating whether you're going to be in attendance or not?
Oh, no, a requirement for attendance, like if you miss X amount of meetings, that type of thing. I don't think there's anything like that.
If you miss X amount of meetings
Meetings,
on a topic, you can't vote on it.
vote, that's correct.
Yeah, some towns have attendance requirements in the sense of
Yeah.
you can't miss more than 4
4
consecutive
meetings.
meetings. You can't miss more than 25% of the meetings
Yes, I've seen
throughout
that
the
too.
year or something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have something like that actually for ordinance review committee because it's an appointed position so
Yes.
that they could be removed. But I feel it's not appropriate for any person to remove a duly elected
Right.
person. I would say the voters should pay attention to who shows up and who
Right,
doesn't
because it's
show
an
up.
elected position.
Yeah,
It's a difference.
so,
But just as and you can notify Doug, the chair, just so that he can let me know that I need to call up applicants and say, hey, you know, due to illness, we don't have a quorum tonight, or whatever it is.
So just a little bit more early communication if we're not
Yeah.
going to make the meeting.
Yeah,
Rather
correct.
than, hey, it's 5:30 and I'm not going to be
Yeah,
there at
yeah.
6 o'clock.
And I would
Correct.
just go on the assumption that we are always meeting the first and third Tuesday.
Yeah.
And if we're not, then hey, it's found time.
Yeah, and I'm trying to make sure that you guys know when there's definitely a meeting in advance, and I see meetings for the foreseeable future, for every meeting right now, because we've got 3 sketch plan subdivisions for the next meeting. So I think we're gonna have a little busy streak here, so,
So funny, last year at this time, we went a couple times without even having a meeting.
yeah.
Right.
I don't see that coming anytime soon.
No, nor do I.
Unless
But
someone-
that's
unless
on
some-
my desk right now. No, I
Unless,
don't.
yeah, unless someone misses a deadline or something like that, that could happen, and we are strict with the deadlines because we have to be, so.
But as just a procedure and a rule, we are gonna follow the MMA suggestion that if you've missed a meeting, you have to just sign an
Yeah.
affidavit that you've watched the video and that you've, that's really, just so people, if anyone's watching, it's not, it's just to guarantee due process to the
Yeah.
applicant, because you
Yeah.
don't want somebody involved in a decision about your application if you don't have a legal document saying that they actually watched the meeting or read the minutes. It's
Right.
just to protect our applicants, and also really
And
to
also
protect
the
the town.
town.
Because you're making a decision
Yeah.
to protect the town.
I'm more thinking of the town.
Right, yeah.
Because
yeah.
if there's an appeal or something in
yeah.
that case, do we have all the documentation saying that we did what we were supposed to do?
Right.
And then I just put miscellaneous for any other topics that any of you might have. Give it to me, I can take it. So if there's anything that you want me to do differently, or, something that would be helpful on our end, between Kathy and I, trying to help things go a little bit smoother. I mean, we are in an extreme time crunch right now with all the appeal and all of that, so we're not getting things out as quickly as we would like to right now. I would just say that right now, we just aren't. But in normal times, I would love to be able to get, everything to you 2 weeks, definitely no later than 1 week before a meeting. That's the goal, but I would love to get into a rotation where we are 2 weeks in, 2 weeks in advance, but it's just not the reality right now because we've got so many agendas going on. But if there's anything that would be helpful from our end, if there's anything that you need from us, I'm trying to track down we used to get these land use books that were just land use ordinance state statutes, and we would buy them for the planning board. They're very inexpensive, so that you could have Title 30A subdivision or all of just the specific land use ordinance from the state. I'm trying to track them down. There used to be a publisher that made an excerpt every year. I found it really helpful. Title 30A would be like bookmarked for exemptions from subdivision, that type of stuff. And so I'm trying to track those down for you. You may know what I'm talking about. You've seen the booklets, right?
Yeah, they're not very big.
They're not very
They're-
big, and so
yeah.
you're not, you don't have all the titles of the entire state, just the land use ones. I'm trying to track that down, but I'm also trying to track down, there's a great one-pager for Robert's Rules of Orders that I just put in the front of my ordinance book, and I should have taken it with me from the last town, but you just put it there, so that if you have questions about procedures, it's just right there. So those are the kind of things that I would like to help you with. Current copy of the ordinance, and I know it's all electronic, but I'm a paper junkie, it's just easier, and then you can tab it for specific meetings, right?
But that's not happening until after we.
After we get
After we
changes.
do a change.
Yeah, we're not gonna do it
I'm
right
not doing
now.
it right now, so I'm looking right at you.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
doing it right now.
Kathy, I don't have the latest updated one, and now I thought, well, there's just gonna be a
There's gonna be more
boatload
There's gonna be
changes.
another one,
Yeah.
Save a few trees.
So
yeah.
once that's I think annually, or if there's any significant changes, particularly in our case, to site plan or subdivision, right?
Well, the states might
Yeah.
run around in that again.
Yeah, I
with
know.
Their LD, so who knows what's
Who
gonna
knows
happen.
what's gonna happen? But just, I find it helpful to have this at my meetings.
Yeah.
But if there's anything, don't hesitate to email me. If you don't want to say it here, then just email me or come in and talk to me one-on-one.
Did we talk about making the minutes a little simpler?
Yes, we talked about
Didn't
that
we?
at the comprehensive meeting, but
We talked about
You
it.
didn't talk about it here.
Not for
No,
planning
I'm getting my
board.
meetings mixed up.
Yes, the comprehensive
Okay, so no,
plan.
this one we decided we wanted as specific as it is, right?
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
I was gonna bring that very topic up.
Okay, okay, bring it up.
Because I think, we talked about what's the legal
Yeah.
legal document that gets fined, and it's the video, I would think, becomes,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the real legal document.
Minutes too.
Well, the minutes could be condensed so that it would be just decisions and action items,
Wasn't
rather than
there-
going through a long written process that you go through, Kathy.
Didn't we have something, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there something at that meeting that we said that the lady said minutes are counted but videos weren't?
I will be completely honest with you, that was over 2 years ago, so I couldn't tell you.
I remember her saying something about minutes.
I can look on their website real quick, see if they have a guideline.
I mean, I love your detailed minutes for this, And I think when we were discussing it in comp plan, we realized we didn't need them like
Yeah.
conversational minutes like
Yeah,
we get for this.
conversational
But these are just,
No, it's
I do
wonderful.
like the detail you have in them.
But just to save time, I think, to help out, it's just minutes.
And God forbid something happens to the tape. Sorry,
Well, like
Chris.
tonight, we're not able to log in for whatever reason, so
I
these
can't
would
log
need to
into
be-
Zoom, so if somebody
Yeah.
wanted to go into Zoom, I can't
Oh,
get that either.
And
And
we're
if
not
something happened with Chris,
sure
we wouldn't
why.
have been able to.
I think we were, actually Jason and I were discussing because George from the comp plan committee, the chair, told me that Zoom has an AI option now that transcribes everything. And then you just go in, staff would go in and make sure it didn't pick up some side conversations, because that can happen too. And then you maybe have to format them to meet the customary style of the format for the town that you're in. But the Zoom Pro, not all of us have that, there's only one license here, but if that could do that for a meeting, think of the hours that would be saved. I mean, Katrina's doing 3 or 4 hours a week, you're probably doing more than that a week, because she's got 3
Board of
committees to
Appeals,
do.
planning
So, that's something that we're looking into, I don't know what the cost associated with that is, but boy, if they could do that. And then you could still decide for some committees that you really only want the, the motions and the general. But for the committees where it's a little bit more important, we would have a complete record. So more to follow, I guess, with that.
Yeah,
I'll talk with Jason was gonna talk to the select board, I think, about actually the AI and the use of AI for minutes, and whether or not that was, I don't know what the cost is associated with that. But I feel like the cost associated with that might be less than staff time associated with that.
So we can kind of go click, 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 click,
Like
boom,
a
we're
year
done.
ago, asking them which takes precedence over something. Is it the notes on the plan? Is it the minutes? Is it the recording? And I'll have to go back through my emails, but I feel like they were saying that the recording and the minutes were kind of similar as far as how they count.
And they both become part of the public record, and you guys approve them, so what's in them
Right,
is gonna count.
right.
But that's something to think about too, though, is less more. If it's not required, maybe less is more. I don't know the answer to that, but that's something to kind of check a little bit into. Yes?
I was able to find a PDF on the MMA Planning Board Manual thing. Although this is dated 2017, I don't know if they've updated it since then. And all that it says is it references Maine State Statute 4032, requires the board to create a record that contains specific information for all board meetings. The record may be written or may be an audio, video, or other electronic reading. At a minimum, it must include date, time, and place of meeting, a list of board members who were present or absent, and all motions and votes taken, including a list of who voted for or against the motion if the vote is taken by roll call. So either or,
Yeah.
and they don't have to be super detailed, is what I'm
Yeah.
interpreting this as.
I do remember that select board years ago, when they didn't have somebody to take the minutes, just use the
recording.
tape, the CD, whatever they were using at the time, and they just signed off on it at the following meeting, that it did make the recording, and I think they signed it off as part of, like, we would approve minutes, they would approve the recording. So, I don't,
The whole question about doing a roll call vote on everything, that's really just if you have someone on Zoom, you should be doing a roll call vote. But other than that, we don't have to, unless, let's just say if we wanted to, if we had a really contentious application and we wanted the final decision to have everybody's name attached to their yay or nay, I suppose we could say.
Yeah, every town is different. Some towns
Yeah.
I've put the vote, 5-0 or
Right.
5-2, and then list the two that were, sometimes a list of two, because then you know who the ones that
right.
weren't. So
Yeah.
every town does them different, and I just have been following the format of the town that I'm in,
Yeah,
right?
we've never done that.
Yeah,
Not that I
you just
recall,
put
not
the
that
vote,
Yeah.
right? That's what I think we've been doing,
Yeah,
it's just
like
5-2 or
I-
whatever.
If it's
3-2,
contentious,
4-2,
the Bridge
whatever.
News will
Yeah.
usually tell you who voted for.
Well, the video is public, right? If someone wants to know, they
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
figure it out.
and I think if we've had a vote that wasn't
Unanimous?
unanimous vote, that we may have
We didn't,
said who did or who didn't vote for it, I thought.
in our minutes, I don't think so,
No,
because I'm
I
thinking
see.
back to the Dollar General, and I don't think it says
Okay.
who voted yea or nay.
Yeah, I think it just says who made the motion, who seconded,
Like, yes,
and then the
like
vote.
3
Okay.
for yes and 1 for no, you
Okay.
know, I think that's what we did. But I did put attendance,
I noticed that, that's why I was looking at it. I think that's a good idea.
Absent,
Just, it helps us
staff.
when we go back to approve the
minutes.
minutes, so that you can
Yeah.
actually figure out who was there.
Yeah.
I took your suggestion the last
Did I
time.
suggest that?
You said it the last time at the meeting. I heard it. I did it.
That's all I have.
Let's go back to miscellaneous topics and submissions. And of course, we'd love to see things as early as possible. It just gives us more
Yeah.
time to chew on it a little bit. And I think the same thing goes with when people come the night of the meeting and deliver something to the table.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's something that we want to be even
No.
reviewing or accepting into,
I don't even think that we should be taking those, like,
right.
That's
technically.
Because
I
now I
don't
have to
think
sit,
so.
so we
You're saying
have to
not
sit
that
there.
night, but eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually we
Yeah,
should, yes,
yes.
yeah, but it should still follow the
Right.
submission deadline.
Deadline,
I mean, if,
Right.
Right, but I would think that if we were up to making a decision that evening on whatever the project might be, I think that piece of paper is going to be irrelevant in
Yeah.
making that decision as
Yeah.
last.
It's too late.
it's almost like the public hearing, just on a different side of the coin, like if it's
You're
already
right, you're right.
passed, right, you know, it's not really fair at that point to
I
anybody.
think we should check our notices to a butter, and what, if there's something on the bottom that talks about, please have comment in by X date. And then after that, we say, we're not taking any more, especially not the night of.
If it's a public hearing night,
Then
you
they
can
have
go
to
right up there and
speak.
speak
That's right.
and actually tell us who
That's
you
right.
are.
Right, that's
And
right,
I'll
they
put
still
it
get
in
another
anonymous.
opportunity,
Yeah.
right? Agreed.
Sometimes it's a piece of paper,
Yeah.
a note, or a one-pager that you could
Yeah.
quickly read through, and other times
Yeah.
it's much more information than that. It certainly should have been presented, just like an applicant would present their material ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah, not just the people, the folks that come to the
Right.
meeting, it's the applicant. They
Right.
can't bring it that night. It's too much to digest.
Right.
So they're just gonna have to wait the 2 weeks, or a month, depending on what the nature of it is. It's too much to, yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it. It's like,
Right.
don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
Martina did a great job reading all that stuff the other night, last time we had a
Such an
meeting.
exciting meeting. I missed you that night.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had to read 2 different letters. She was like, by the
It
end of it,
barely
she's like,
happened anyway. It was just Robert, Marty, and me.
yup.
By the skin of our teeth.
Other things going on.
I know. That was definitely,
everything goes down.
that was a total excuse.
Okay, want to move on to 5, anything else for, under miscellaneous? Okay, now we'll move on to item 5, which, other planning board business and a meeting schedule. For our next meeting to be on February 25th, 2025, at
That's
6 PM, that's a Board of Appeals meeting?
That's correct.
We don't have to be,
Administrative appeal, and that's a code officer decision, and then
Okay.
we have the variance for the Tarpentary Tower's height.
okay, so that's not anything that we need to be there
Nope,
for?
nope, I'm just making you aware of the time frame of that.
Is that stuff already on the website?
Yes,
The second one, A, is for the March 4th, 2025, 6 PM Planning Board meeting. And we
correct.
have items for that coming up.
We have 3 sketch plan applications for that one.
I can't be here for that one.
Okay, thank you.
Should be snowmobiling and way up north that week.
Okay,
And March 18th is the next item for the March 18th, 2025, for a planning board public hearing relating to the ordinances. And you say we're going to have something else on that too?
we also are seeing Brown is coming back for that date.
Okay.
So that's gonna be a longer meeting. I mean, I don't anticipate that their application is necessarily longer, because you've seen it before, right?
Right.
But we've got 9 amendments.
But
as
we're
a-
doing Sam Brown first, right?
We're doing C and Brown
Yeah,
first, and then the public hearing for the ordinance amendments.
Is the CN Brown a public hearing as well?
We have advertised it as a public hearing. That's why we had that discussion tonight about that, because we had to advertise anyway, so we did them both.
I was just mentally preparing
Yeah.
for how long of a night it'll
Yeah.
be.
there are a few changes on the application, so it's not exactly what you saw before, but pretty darn close to it. And then the ordinance, like I said, there's 9 ordinances, 4 of which I think are changes
They
to
haven't
the
even been
land
written,
use.
guys, so we're
Yeah.
supposed to meet tomorrow, just as an
Yeah.
FYI. The ordinance review
Yeah.
committee is meeting at 9, and we're writing ordinances, changing things that we've never seen before,
Yeah.
that are supposed to be done tomorrow. So I
Yeah.
have my concerns about that, but,
Well, we'll see where we land.
yeah.
You know, we can do what we can do. 4 or 5 of them are
Yeah,
pretty much done.
Doggy daycare
Yeah.
is done. and
There's a
that's-
couple that are, well, there's probably 3 that are done. 4 that's the easy, and then there's some new ones that got added to the list. So,
Is the Sam Brown going to be considered a new application?
it is,
So it's brand new?
yeah. So they have to go, I mean, they are considered a new application, yes.
Okay. So any reference to previous application, we don't have to go through and review any of that?
No.
Okay.
And I saved all my CM Brown stuff.
Right.
One thing I'd like to bring up to everybody's attention is we will be having 2 vacant seats this year.
Oh, thank you.
So if you guys know anybody, tell them to get in here, get their paperwork. I'm not sure if the
What's the-
two, that it's Mr. Jimmy Allen and Ms. Sue Fleck that are up for seats. I don't know if they're running, they haven't pulled papers yet, but if you guys know anybody that wants to be part of the planning board, we'd be love to have them.
What's the date that they have to have their
Has
papers
to have
in?
it, they can pull it anytime now until March 21st, they have to have it back in here.
Practically tomorrow.
So if you
Yeah.
guys know anybody, send them our way, and then they can be a part of, potentially be the part of the board with you guys. If you guys run into Jimmy or Sue, let them know they need to get their papers if they want to run again.
Forgot about that, thank you.
Yeah, and Martina, maybe tomorrow you can make that announcement too at the ORC
ORC,
meeting as
yeah.
well.
Okay, any other business tonight? No, okay. Item 6 is, we'll take a vote to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Marty. Second. Second by Robert, all in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Very good.